The man who called it a rat poison was right. He just didn't know how right. In 2018, Warren Buffett sat down at Berkshire Hathaway's annual shareholder meeting and called Bitcoin probably rat poison squared. The crypto community lost their minds. They called him old, out of touch, a dinosaur who didn't understand the future of money. Which is funny, because 8 years later, the data proves he was more right than even he realized. Not because Bitcoin went to zero. It didn't. Not because crypto failed as a technology. That's a separate argument. But because the ecosystem built around it, the exchanges, the tokens, the influencers, the funds, the entire infrastructure of the crypto industry has quietly become one of the most sophisticated wealth transfer mechanisms ever constructed. And the money is flowing in one direction, away from you. So let's follow it. If you don't know what a market maker does in crypto, you don't know who's actually playing you. Here's something almost nobody explains when they talk about crypto markets. In a traditional stock market, there are rules, strict ones. If you're a company insider and you know something the public doesn't, trading on that information is a federal crime called insider trading. Market manipulation, meaning artificially pumping a price to dump your holdings on retail investors, is illegal. The SEC exists specifically to catch and prosecute people who do this. Now here's the part that should make you stop and think. None of those rules apply to crypto. Crypto markets operate almost entirely outside the regulatory framework that governs every other financial market you've ever participated in. There's no equivalent of the SEC with real enforcement teeth. There's no requirement to disclose insider positions. There's no law against a token creator quietly holding 40% of the supply while publicly telling their audience to buy. And the people who built this industry knew that from day one. So what does an unregulated market with billions of dollars flowing through it actually look like in practice? It looks like a system where the people who design the game also deal the cards, also own the casino, and also get to change the rules whenever the current rules stop working in their favor. And you're sitting at the table thinking you're playing poker. You're not. You're the product. The mechanism nobody talks about, and the reason your altcoin went to zero. Let me explain exactly how this works, because once you see the mechanism, you cannot unsee it. It starts with something called a token launch. A team of developers creates a new cryptocurrency. Before it ever goes public, before any retail investor can buy a single coin, the founders allocate a portion of the total supply to themselves. This is called the founders' allocation or pre-mine, and it's standard practice across virtually every crypto project ever launched. Now here's where it gets interesting. The typical founder allocation sits somewhere between 20% and 50% of the total token supply. On paper, this is disclosed, usually buried in a white paper that almost nobody reads. In practice, what it means is that the people selling you the vision of a decentralized financial revolution are doing so while sitting on a pile of tokens they acquired for essentially nothing. Then comes the launch. The token goes live. Marketing begins. Influencers get paid, sometimes in tokens, sometimes in cash, almost never with disclosed compensation. Social media campaigns start. The price climbs. New buyers pour in. Volume spikes. The charts look beautiful. And the people who got in before you, the founders, the early investors, the venture funds, they're all watching their essentially free tokens climb in value on the back of your buying pressure. And then, quietly, they start selling. Not all at once. That would be too obvious. It happens gradually, systematically, sometimes through a process called a vesting schedule that releases their tokens slowly over time. The price drifts lower, then lower. Then the team goes quiet. Then the Twitter account stops posting. Then the Discord server empties out, and your token is worth 90% less than what you paid. This has happened thousands of times. Not dozens, thousands. According to data from crypto analytics firm Chainalysis, over 40% of all tokens launched in the last 3 years have lost more than 90% of their value within 12 months of launch. And the founding teams behind most of them walked away with millions. This isn't a bug in the system. It is the system, the number that proves. This isn't a conspiracy theory. Let's talk about what the actual data shows. Between 2020 and 2024, retail crypto investors, meaning regular people, not hedge funds, not institutions, lost a combined estimated $17 billion to what researchers classify as rug pulls and exit scams alone. That's just the outright frauds. That number doesn't include the losses from tokens that technically still exist, but have lost 95% of their value. It doesn't include the billions lost in exchange collapses. It doesn't include the algorithmic stablecoin failures. If you add all of it together, the total wealth destruction in crypto for retail investors since 2020 runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Now ask yourself a different question. Where did that money go? Because money doesn't just disappear. When a retail investor loses $10,000 in a token collapse, that $10,000 didn't evaporate. It transferred to the people who sold before the collapse, to the founders who launched the token, to the market makers who structured the liquidity, to the exchanges that collected fees on every single transaction going up and coming down. The losses are perfectly symmetrical with someone else's gains, and that someone else is never the person watching the YouTube video about why this token is going to change the world, the influencer machine. This is where it gets personal. Here's the part that almost nobody in the crypto space will say out loud. The influencer economy in crypto is not an independent media ecosystem. It is a paid distribution network for token promotions disguised as independent financial commentary. Here's how it works in practice. A new project launches. They have a marketing budget. They approach influencers with large followings in the crypto space and offer them what's called an influencer allocation, tokens at a discounted price or for free in exchange for promotional content. Sometimes there's a formal contract. Often there isn't. Sometimes the compensation is disclosed. Usually it isn't. The influencer makes a video. It's enthusiastic. The charts look good. The technology sounds revolutionary. The team seems credible. The influencer doesn't mention they were paid, or if they do, they bury it at the end of a 20-minute video in a disclaimer that flashes for 4 seconds. The audience buys. The influencer's free tokens are now worth real money because the audience bought. The influencer sells. Quietly, the price drops. The audience is left holding tokens that are worth less than what they paid. The FTC has regulations about disclosing paid promotions. In crypto, those regulations are routinely ignored, rarely enforced, and the influencers operating in this space know it. According to a study published in the Journal of Financial Economics, crypto influencers who promoted tokens on average earned returns of over 400% on their undisclosed token allocations. The people who bought based on those promotions lost money on average. 400% for the people with the microphone, losses for the people listening. But here's what makes crypto different from every other scam in history. Now here's where I want to be precise, because the easy version of this argument is to say crypto is a scam and walk away, and that's not quite right, or at least it's not the complete picture. What makes crypto genuinely different from a traditional Ponzi scheme or a straightforward fraud is the ideology wrapped around it. Every other financial scam in history has been purely about money. Someone takes your money and gives you nothing. Crypto is different because it gives you something real. A community, an identity, a belief system, a cause. The idea that you're part of a financial revolution that's going to dismantle the corrupt old system and replace it with something fair and transparent and decentralized. That ideology is the product, and it's extraordinarily effective. Because when you believe in a cause, you don't just invest money, you invest your identity. And when someone challenges the investment, it doesn't feel like financial criticism. It feels like a personal attack. It feels like the old guard trying to suppress the revolution. So you hold, and you buy more, and you tell your friends, and you bring more money into the system. And the founders and the early investors and the market makers watch it all happen and quietly cash out while the believers hold the line. The most brilliant scams in history have always had one thing in common: the victims defend them. So what is Bitcoin actually worth? Now let me make a distinction that matters, because everything I just described applies almost entirely to the altcoin and token ecosystem. Bitcoin is a genuinely different animal. And I want to be honest about that. Bitcoin has no founder sitting on a secret allocation, no team collecting undisclosed tokens, no white paper promising revolutionary utility that never materializes. It is genuinely decentralized in a way that almost nothing else in crypto actually is, and it has survived 15 years of people calling it dead. But here's the honest question about Bitcoin that nobody wants to answer. What is it actually for? The original promise was peer-to-peer electronic cash, a way to transfer value without banks or governments. That use case largely failed. Bitcoin is too slow, too expensive, and too volatile to function as a currency. Almost nobody uses it to buy coffee. El Salvador tried to make it legal tender, and the experiment has been quietly walked back, so the narrative shifted. Now it's digital gold, a store of value, a hedge against inflation. Except in 2022, when inflation hit a 40-year high, Bitcoin lost 65% of its value in the same year. The hedge didn't hedge. So the narrative shifted again. Now it's an asymmetric bet on the future of money. A speculative asset. Something you hold because someone else will pay more for it later. Which is fine. Speculation is legitimate. People speculate on all kinds of things. But when the entire value proposition of an asset is that someone else will pay you more for it later, you are no longer investing. You are playing a game of musical chairs, and the music always stops eventually. The question is just whether you'll still be standing when it does. The mental model you need before you touch any of this. For years, people have described crypto as the Wild West. Unregulated, dangerous, but exciting, high risk, high reward, and there's some truth to that framing. But I think there's a more honest mental model. Imagine a casino. But in this casino, some of the players also own the casino, and some of the players also built the games, and some of the players also control how the odds are set, and none of them are required to tell you which ones they are. That's the crypto market. Now, in a regular casino, at least the house edge is published. You know going in that the slot machine pays back 92 cents on every dollar. The information asymmetry is bounded. In crypto, the information asymmetry is unlimited. The people on the other side of your trade know things about the token, the team, the supply schedule, the upcoming unlock dates, the exchange listing plans that you will never know, and they are under no legal obligation to tell you. That is not a market. That is a structured wealth transfer dressed up in the language of financial revolution. And the language is the point, because revolution sounds exciting. Revolution sounds like the right side of history. Nobody wants to be the person who missed the revolution because they were too cautious. But revolutions have victims too. And in this one, the victims are almost always the people who believed in it the most. Here's what I think you should actually do with this. I'm not here to tell you to never touch crypto. That's your decision and your money and your risk tolerance. What I am here to do is give you the honest picture that the people selling you crypto will never give you. The honest picture is this. The crypto ecosystem has produced extraordinary wealth for a small number of people who got in early, built the infrastructure, or were paid to promote it. For the broad retail investor base, the data shows net wealth destruction at a massive scale. The mechanisms that enable this, unregulated markets, undisclosed influencer payments, insider token allocations, and no meaningful legal consequences for fraud, are all still fully in place today. Nothing structurally has changed, which means the next cycle will look exactly like the last one. New tokens, new narratives, new influencers, new communities of true believers, and the same quiet transfer of wealth from the people holding the dream to the people who designed the game. The most dangerous thing in any financial market isn't volatility. It isn't even fraud. It's a story so compelling that it makes you feel stupid for questioning it. Crypto has the best story in the history of financial markets. That's exactly why you should question it the hardest. Drop a comment. I want to know, do you think crypto is a revolution that still hasn't reached its potential, or have you started to see the cracks? Because I read every single one.